Hello and welcome. This is Lisa Jones, and you are listening to the Exploring Death podcast. Hello and welcome to the Exploring Death podcast. I'm Lisa Jones, your host, and today I have with me Sarina Baptista. She is an award-winning author, international speaker, spiritual teacher, and psychic medium. She teaches classes and is a visiting medium at Lilydale, New York during their summer program. Sarina discovered her gifts through her own tragedy, the passing of her 7-year-old son in 2007. She learned that her son did not really die. He was still very close, and he led her to her incredible mediumship gifts. Her book, My View from Heaven, was written by her son, JT, to answer questions about where he is, how he found his way, and what he's doing now, and why we chose to come to Earth in the first place. Sarina works with a collective of guides who can see what her clients need and assist in each session. Her training programs are designed to train others to connect with their other side based upon what she has learned from her son and the guides. Welcome, Sarina.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Lisa. It is such a pleasure to be here.
Well, I am so happy to have you here. And we were just talking about how we met, and it was so funny because it was, I think, the very end of the IANS conference that was just happened in Philadelphia in August.
Yes.
And I think we were walking back to our rooms or something. We just kind of almost collided, I think, in the hallway. Mm-hmm. And somehow, I guess your name badge said Loveland, Colorado. And I said, oh, that's funny. That's where, when I was first born, that was my first home, was Loveland, Colorado. And I think, again, the whole theme was love and all this. And I said, that's so amazing. And then you started telling me about your mediumship gifts and how they came about. And so now here we are, and you're going to share with my listeners all about this.
And I love to share my son with everybody, anybody who'll listen, because it is such an amazing story. It really is.
Great. Well, let's jump right in.
Great. So what happened with me is, as Lisa said, I had a tragedy in my home. I woke up one morning, it was a Friday morning, and my son, JT, who was 7 at the time, wasn't breathing in his room. He had been sick. He caught the flu on Monday, and this was Friday. And you think, oh my God, the flu, big deal, nothing to really worry about. But I went in to check on him that Friday morning, and he wasn't breathing. And I immediately knew actually that he was gone. I had some synchronistic things happen to me. Now, before this, I had no awareness. I'm sure I was psychic and all of that. We all are. But I had no awareness of those abilities. And so when this happened, of course, the first thing that you do is just kind of go into a spiral, which happened. And I became a grieving mom. I became that mom that lost a kid. And all the while, JT was like moving things around in the house, and he would take things off of shelves and put them on the floor, in the middle of the floor. So it wasn't like it was just moved off to the side. No, he put it in the walkway. And I thought, I had a 3-year-old at the time, also his little brother who shared his room. And I thought, how is Anthony getting up way up to that top shelf, getting this little Matchbox car down and putting it on the floor? And I thought, okay, I'm losing it. Things are going crazy here. And things like that would happen all the time. And it was about, actually not even a week in, when I was sitting at my computer desk, and there was a list in front of me of all the people who needed to be called. And thankfully, I did not have to go down that list. I had lots of people come in. They just swooped in, and they really helped us during that time. I don't know what we would have done without our neighbors and friends who came and flew in from everywhere. But I was looking at this list, and I said, somebody has my answer. Somebody knows why. Because my daughter, who was 2 years younger than JT, she was 5, she had the same flu. She actually had a higher fever, and she was throwing up. JT wasn't. So there were these other things where it looked like if anybody needed to go or would pass, it would be my daughter because she was sicker. And so I thought, somebody knows, somebody has my information about why. Why did he go? So I ran my finger down the list and I stopped on this woman's name. And I had met her maybe once or twice. She was the mother of a friend of mine. She lived in California. She met JT once, and that was the extent of the relationship. And I said, she knows. And I had no idea why I was thinking any of that or why I said any of that, but I picked up my phone immediately. I called her. I didn't even say who I was. I just said, why? Why did he go? And she said, go get a paper and pen because JT visited me last night and he has a message for you. Wow. And that was within a week of him leaving. And it was very, very powerful message. There were 3 parts to it. And it was, it all made perfect sense. And so at that moment, I knew it wasn't random. It wasn't just something that happened because my kid got sick. There was more to it. And so from that moment forward, I was bound and determined to find him again. And boy, did he make that easy. Because he was everywhere. He was everywhere. He would give me these vibrations head to toe when he was around, and it would just, it felt like just a hug. And it was just so comforting to know where he was. I knew where he was. And it was about 6 months into that journey, about 6 months after he passed. And it was like he would be throwing out these breadcrumbs. I always say it's like, following the breadcrumbs in the forest. He would throw out the breadcrumbs and I would go, oh, there's another breadcrumb. I've got to, what is it? Where does this one lead? I had other people telling me, other intuitives telling me, because I did have a lot of them in my life. I just didn't know I was one. I had other people telling me, oh, he's got big plans for you. JT has big plans for you. And I would say, well, dang, I wish you would just tell me what it is. And about 6 months in, I found out. I was having a conversation with a medium, had never had a reading before from a medium, but I wanted to talk to my kid. And this was somebody who was recommended. It was a phone session. Again, the person was in California. She had no idea anything about me, anything about JT. And we started talking. And she says, oh, I have your guides here. These are very high guides. And they're showing very thick ink on a contract. And I said, well, I don't really know what that means. And she said, oh, this is your contract. This is what you said you would do when you were here. Did you know that you are the bridge between this world and the next? You are a medium. And I said, well, how do you get that, right? How do you even, do you just wake up and you're a medium? I mean, how does that work? And she said, training, training, training. And so I immediately got into a training program. JT lined everything up for me because at the time, I wouldn't have trusted anybody who hadn't lost a child, because you get into that mindset. Nobody understands me. Nobody gets it unless they've lost a child themselves, because it is a very different kind of grief. And so what did JT do? He threw a psychic medium in front of me who had lost a son who was teaching these classes. And so I joined in, and I also took classes down in Boulder. I'm in Colorado, so I took classes down in Boulder, and bam, kids started coming to me from the other side to get messages to their parents because I knew them through grief groups. So it happened very, very quickly. Within a month, these kids were coming to me, and I didn't have clear connection at the time, so it was pretty iffy and spotty, but I persevered, and with JT right there pushing me on and saying, come on, Mom, you can do it, you can do it. I'd get discouraged. You know how it is being a medium, when you are learning how to do this, it can be such a frustrating process. It can be so frustrating. I just wasn't as clear as I wanted to be. But then it was very, very quickly, once I really dove in, dedicated my time to it, to the work that I was supposed to do, then it happened very quickly. And again, JT by my side the entire time. So it was amazing being able to give these messages, especially to bereaved parents, about their kids. Their kids are okay. and their kids are right beside them, and they're bringing them messages and signs. And it just still fills my heart, and makes me all warm and fuzzy when I think about how hard these kids work at getting messages to their parents and others too, not just kids. I deal with, as you do too, deal with all sorts of energies on the other side who come and say, oh, I need to talk to my daughter, or I need to talk to my dad, or whatever it happens to be. So it's just an incredible experience. I never imagined I would be here, but I'm so, so grateful because I am one of the blessed ones. I know where my kid is, no doubt.
That's beautiful. And what did you do before? What was your
Well, so I was a software engineer for a long time.
Well, I love it. That's like me, a former accountant, CPA for Pricewaterhouse.
Yes, yeah. So I have that marriage of the left brain and the right brain, and I love it because it helps me to be a better medium. Not to say that others who don't have aren't good mediums, but it helps me personally to be a better medium because I'm a skeptic at heart. I have to see it to believe it, and then you get into this world and it's like, okay, I'm just going to roll with it. But having that engineering background has really helped me.
Yeah, that's amazing. One thing you said too is how hard they work to get their message through. I'd love you to talk about that because I don't think people realize that it is a lot of work for them.
Yeah.
And that, that's why these messages are so precious, because it's not,
Yes.
it's not like we just turn a switch on and we hear verbatim. It's not like you and I talking. It's not like us turning Zoom on and you and I having this clear connection.
Would that be great?
Where we can see each other and hear each other and explain things. No, there's so much symbolism and,
yes.
I don't know. So let's talk about how hard they work to get this message through.
Yes, definitely. And the other thing too is that those who are grieving, often don't get those messages because of the grief, because of the wall that we have between us and the other world. And so then they have to work all the harder. So when we're conscious about it, when somebody's conscious about it, looking for those signs, looking for those synchronicities, and that's how they do it a lot in the beginning, is through animals doing weird things, the animal messengers. And I have a lot of people come into my office who said, you would not believe what this bird did. And JT with dragonflies, he made a dragonfly dance in front of me at the cemetery one day. And then the very next day, a dragonfly hopped on my finger and tucked in its wings. And that's not something that dragonflies do. So they really work with nature and with anything at their disposal. Electronics. Oh my gosh, They love to use electronics because it is so easy to manipulate zeros and ones, so it is easy to manipulate. You might get a call. I can't tell you the number of clients I've had who've received calls from their deceased relative on the phone because it'll pop up. The phone's been disconnected. They don't have the service anymore, but it'll pop up with their name. As when the phone rings and it'll pop up with their name. How do you say that's not them, right? That is so them. They do things like that. They'll use other people. Like JT had to use other people to get to me because I couldn't hear him myself. So he would go to people, he would give them messages. And these are people who wouldn't be ordinarily getting messages from the other side. These are not mediums. These were friends, and they would say, "Oh no, this is definitely JT," and I know that he's trying to get through to you.
And what would they receive? Like a dream, or they would get? What kinds of things if they're not mediums? Like how did they know that they were getting messages?
One of them actually did see him in her office. She's a chiropractor, and she's now in Idaho. And at the time, it was funny because she was opening up to who she was too. And JT was a huge, huge part of that because he would show up. He would show up when she's working, especially when she was working with kids. He would just show up in her office and she could see him. And of course, in the beginning, it was, oh, am I going crazy here? Is it just wishful thinking? And then he would talk to her and say, here's what you need to do for this child. He would help her with her work. So things like that. And also, yeah, definitely dreams for sure. And he loved to come to other people as dragonflies too. And then just kind of drop thoughts into their head to give to me. So it was a lot of telepathic stuff too, which those people didn't know how to do that. That wasn't something that they were trained to do. So they use whatever they need to use at their disposal, definitely.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, with dragonflies is a huge connection for my husband who passed. And I
Oh,
mean,
wow.
like in the middle of winter, a dragonfly would come and circle my son's head at the, at
Oh
the
my
soccer
gosh.
championships or something, and
Oh,
then come fly right up
wow.
to me and then, surround my daughter. I mean, it's just always, or even as, last year, it's been 15 years since he died, but my daughter and I went to Thailand and we were
Oh,
with the
wow.
elephants and we were just like, this is amazing. And all of a sudden we look up and there must have been 100 dragonflies just,
Oh my
floating around us.
gosh.
And we're like, oh my gosh. So
Wow. That
yeah.
is so wonderful. Yeah, stories like that, there's a great video that I was just reminded of. JT's helping me here.
Yeah, good.
And it went viral on YouTube. It's a grieving mother at the funeral for her little son, and a red balloon comes popping into the room, floats up beside her, and is kissing her on the cheek. A
Wow.
red balloon that had helium in it. And so they'll use anything. That
Right.
was so much her son letting her know, hey, I'm here. I'm sorry. That's the other, they're so sorry that we're going through what we're going through. But of course, it's a necessary thing. They had to go. And that's one
Right.
thing across the board. I'm sure you hear it all the time too, is, and one of the things that JT said was that he tried to leave twice before, but he couldn't leave me. But this time he had to go. This was his last exit. So he had to take it.
Wow. Wow. That's powerful to hear that and to understand. And that's, I feel like that was my directive by having my out of body experience and seeing heaven and coming back. And it's really to shine light on death and to show people that, death is it's just an exit, exit right, or exit
Right.
left. And that we're just, it's not as difficult as it is to miss the physical presence of that person in our life. There's such a bigger story going on here.
Yes.
And if we
This
can
is, yeah.
if we can just wrap our brains around that. And I was going to ask you too about, you'd said, when people are grieving, there's just that wall of grief. And so what ideas or, what things has JT been able to provide you with to help people really break down those walls and, open their heart to receiving the messages rather than staying in that stuck grief?
Right. And that is the key. I'm glad you used that word, stuck grief, because we do have to grieve. We have to grieve loss, and we have to go through the steps of grief. So it's not about getting out of it because we have to be in it. And that's one thing I learned in the very beginning of my journey, was that I needed to do my process. But I did choose to do it very differently than all of the other grieving moms that I was talking to, because they all told me, oh, you're never going to get over it. Life's never the same. It's always miserable. You'll never have joy again. You're never going to laugh again. And I thought, whoa, wait a minute. No. I don't think that's what this is about. And so I made a commitment to myself and to JT and to my family too. I still had 2 little kids. They needed their mom, so I made a commitment to do grief differently. I was not going to listen to that. And so my process, one of the things that really, really helped, and I do believe it helped with my connection with JT, is journaling. So I would have a journal pad and lots of different colored pens. And there was a lot of red ink, a lot of anger in that. There was also a lot of blue ink, very sad, and green ink. Very, because when you're grieving, there is a jealousy piece, or it's an envy piece of everybody around you being able to go on with their lives, and you're stuck in this hell, what you think is hell. And so a lot of green as well. But what that does is it gets the emotions out of your head and onto paper. What that will do is it'll open you up so that you can receive more from the other side or just from your own intuition. So journaling was probably the biggest thing. And then not fighting those grief bursts, those times where you just feel like you're overcome and like it's going to swallow you up and you're going to die right then and there. And I found that if I just let it be, if I just allowed myself to be there, that at the very end, when I thought that I wouldn't be able to handle another second of that grief, it was almost like a hand would reach out and pull me out of the pit. It was a very interesting process. And I know those were our helpers from the other side who were assisting me in processing too. So it's not about getting out of it. You really have to sink into it, but journaling, allowing it to happen, and knowing that you will be able to rise back up again. And then asking for your loved one to come. And I always tell my clients, don't feel like you're bothering them. What do you think they're doing? This is their job right now. Their job is to make sure you know that they're okay. That's their job. And they really want to do their job well. So don't think you're bothering them. Don't think that, I always thought that if I asked for JT to come 50 times a day, he's got to be doing other more important things. And he said, no, Mom, I'm here for you. This is my job right now. And so I stopped feeling guilty about calling him all the time and having him be there. So that's the other thing I tell clients is please ask for them to come in and talk to them and work on hearing them. And I created an online course, but it's all about that. It's connecting to the other side. It's building the foundation to connect to the other side. And in very layman's terms, because I'll tell you again, I didn't have any of the awareness or language that I do now about the connections that you and I have, so it's all about starting from the basics. And that has been a very successful thing for people too. Being open, being open to the possibility that they're there and that they want to communicate with you.
Well, I love what you said, and especially about doing grief differently. As you said, we all have to process the grief, and that's just part of the human experience. However, there's a choice of looking to do it differently and looking for the joy and looking for, the love that's still all around us. Because same thing, right after my husband died, I took my children to a grief group, and the kids went and did paper stuff and had all sorts of fun. They were doing fun things and getting the grief out through their creative, play. And meanwhile, us adults sat around a table and everybody introduced themselves and told their story. And there were people sitting there and had been weekly for 5 years telling the same story about how their husband got electrocuted in the rooftop or whatever. And I just, after that first meeting, I'm like, I can't do this. I don't want to be sitting here in 5 years.
Right.
And I knew that there had to be a different way. And, and the same kind of thing. I mean, when he died, he started talking to me and I'm like, what's happening?
Wow.
And, it was, it was rather shocking. And yet I understand, like you said too, I believe everybody is a medium. We all have this connection, this connectivity ability. It's just a matter of whether you're interested and want to pursue it. And, and some people just don't, which that's fine because they can come to people that can do it. But to know that is, to me, it's everybody's ability. And if you're open to it, the more open you are to it, the more it'll come to you.
Absolutely.
So, wow, that's wonderful. Well, I would love to pull a few cards for you right now.
Oh, I'd love that. Thank you.
Okay, great. So let's see what Spirit has to say about all of this amazing connectivity to the other side and what death is and isn't. And let's see.
Yeah, more isn't than is, right?
That's right. That's right. Oh, I love it. I love it. Okay. So the first card, which is always the blockage card, is pleasure. So of course,
Oh,
death is not pleasurable. It's like the last thing that anybody wants to deal with, but it's also everybody is going to deal with it, whether it's their own death or a death of a loved one. And so Spirit's just saying that, yeah, we understand it's not pleasurable. We're not saying it's easy. We're not saying any of that. But the key is, this is the action card, is radiance. And what it's allowing is for the person to truly share. It's got a heart right in the center of this beautiful lighthouse. And that's the key, right? Is that once they cross to the other side, their radiance is still shining through to us all the time. And it's just a
yes.
matter if we're open. And my whole body is chilling as I'm saying this, because that's really the key, is to by believing in it. And then you have to believe first before you see it. Then you start seeing it, and you start seeing it everywhere you go. And it's just this magical unfolding of this radiance that just keeps shining through. And that's what you're
Absolutely.
providing people. You're this radiant, beautiful lighthouse, and allowing the light to just flow out to people, which is so healing for them.
Yes, and
So
I have to
that's
say too, with JT, he and I have a lighthouse connection as well, because I call him my lighthouse, and
oh, wow.
I say thank you for being my lighthouse in the rough seas, so I don't go crashing against the rocks. And
Check it
so
out. This
that
picture
I
has
know
rough
I
seas.
know. Yes. So when you showed that to me, I was wow, JT, that's pretty cool.
Wow. Oh my gosh. And then the outcome card is
Oh,
joy,
oh, wow. Oh my
which
gosh, that's
is
beautiful.
isn't it beautiful? And it's a heart with this beautiful, just like a wispy, beautiful cloud. It's not I don't even want to call it a cloud, but just like, what would you call that little
Right. Just
I don't
energy.
know, energy,
Yeah.
yes, flowing out of it, and joy. And that to me is the gift of grief, is that if you
Hmm.
can really embrace it and allow the joy to come through from the other side, again, it's not going to replace them sitting next to you,
Right.
but it buoys your heart and your soul up to know that you're still connected to them in a very deep way.
Absolutely.
And in some ways
Yes.
deeper, like with my dad, I didn't have a super close connection with him in the physical world, but now, oh my goodness, he's guiding me and leading me, and it's just, there's no uh you know no distortion, no keeping us from each other
None of the
in the
junk.
afterlife. Yeah,
Right. None of the junk that was here in the relationships, because it's a
right.
difficult place to be in relationship here on purpose.
That's
But
right.
yeah, what I love is that goes away. That goes away, and we can reform relationships that we didn't really have here.
That's right. And that's the other amazing thing to me, is that you can heal relationships from
Yes.
the other side. I mean, in some
Yes.
ways, way easier than you can in the earthly plane, because,
Absolutely.
sometimes people don't want to talk about it or whatever. But once they're crossed, and again, as my guides are saying, yeah, well, you can also talk to their soul when they're still here on this earth, which can
True.
really transition things, or, transform things as well. But, well, do you have any cool stories? I mean, you shared some about JT, but is there any other stories that come to mind about your work?
I think that the one where they actually received the call from their son was that was mind blowing. That the son actually called them on the phone. Their son called them on the phone, and obviously, they answered, and there wasn't anybody there. It's not like
Yeah, I was going to say,
they
oh
could
my God, was
actually
he
say
talking to
it.
them?
No, but there have been times. There was one other time that I remember where they did pick up the line, and it was an old voicemail that their son or daughter, I can't remember which, had left for them years ago. So it pops up their name on the phone, and they answer it, and it's an old voicemail telling them, "Hey, mom, I love you," and then whatever else the message was. That just blows me away, that they can do that, that they can manipulate that enough to get that message through. It was just incredible. there was one thing that JT did in that conversation that I had with that woman in California who said, go get a paper and pen. JT's got some messages for you. As she's talking about how much he loves me, I look down at my computer desk, and there is an area down in between where you would put a printer down there because it was a computer. And there was a little Post-it sized paper that I'd never seen before. And it said, "I love you, Mom." And it was in his handwriting.
Wow.
I'd never seen this before. We also found one for his dad. "I love you, Dad." And again, I don't know when he did these or when he put them there, but it was just there. And that was just incredible. They are just so good at that, at getting us those really critical messages when you think you just can't deal with it any longer. You know, they will do something to kind of swoop in and take care of it. There was also one with a father. I had, this one cracked me up. It was one of my first gallery readings that I did, and that's the mediumship demonstration. And there was a man who came through. It was a father figure. And I'm telling this because this is something that I think your listeners would be interested in understanding about the afterlife. So the father figure comes through and he's looking for his son. And he gives me an audience and he gives me all of this data, and nobody is taking him. Nobody is taking this man, this dad. And where is your son? Where is he? And this woman raises her hand and she said, "I think you're talking to my dad." And I looked at her, and clearly she is not a son. Clearly she is a female. And I said, "What's the deal? Why would your dad be looking for a son?" And she said, "Well, he always wanted boys. My name is Jackie. You know, my sister's name is Frankie. And there was another sister, Georgie, or something like that." And she said, he always wanted boys. And so, and he was not a nice man here. And that came through very evidently in the reading. But then what happened was, so that she could recognize him, he said, "If I don't say these things to her, she won't think it's me because I was a real, you know what, on the planet." And he was so descriptive of everything. He described things just to a T. So we knew it was her. And I said to her that, okay, he's saying these things because this is how you will know him. And she agreed. And then I said, okay, now you need to turn into your soul self. And at that moment, he switched into that beautiful, loving, light being, and was able to give messages of love instead of the messages of "you weren't good enough," you know, those kinds of things. But he said I had to do that so she would know that it was me. Right. So that just blew my mind, because I thought, wow, here he's coming through. He worked so hard, and I almost sent him away because he was being such an idiot. You know, he was being so mean. I almost sent him away. He says, "No, she needs to hear this." So she and I are great friends now, which I think is just amazing, but he had to do it that way. And so just a note to people when they're talking to their loved ones, you know, on the other side, remember they have shifted. They do see the higher perspective now. Mm-hmm. So most of them do anyway. And so they might come to you in a different form or in a different energy than when they were here.
I love that. I had a very similar situation at a demonstration where this really curmudgeon-y man came through, and I was just like, oh, like, you know, and this woman's like, "Yeah, that's my dad." And, you know, it was, but she wouldn't have recognized him if he came through as his soul self. But once we got the established connection, then he was able to say, "I am so sorry. I screwed up. I was not a good dad." And I mean, it brings tears to my eyes just thinking about it, or it wells me up with emotion, because that's something she always wanted to hear and needed to hear in her life. And she didn't get it before he died, but she got it after. And it was so healing for her. And, and I'm sure for your friend as well, that was definitely a very healing moment. So yeah, that's, to me, the most, it's like, expect the unexpected, right? You just don't know how people are going to come through or what they're going to say, or but it's fascinating. And that's why it's so much fun too, because it's kind of it's like this, mystery game and
never the same.
That's right. Always different. Well, thank you so much, Sarina. This has been so much fun talking to you. And I'm so excited that, again, your story is just so filled with light and love, and the idea that here you've lost a son, and yet he's probably closer to you now than he ever was, because, as a little boy, he was running around doing his own thing, but now he's standing there with you and helping heal the world. So
yes, he is.
What a blessing.
Yes, I feel the same way. Thank you so much. I really appreciate being able to share his story. Definitely. Absolutely.
Oh, and we will have all your links on the website. So
great.
We'll be sure to let people know how they can get in contact with you if they'd like to connect with you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Exploring Death podcast. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Before you make any financial or legal decisions, consult a professional. This show is copyrighted by Exploring Death. Written permission must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting.